I'm gonna wait one more minute and then we'll get started. Let me. No snakes this morning, Oakley?
No, no more snakes.
What was it, do you think? What size?
Big blue racer.
Oh,
It wasn't a bull snake. It wasn't a garter snake. It wasn't a rattlesnake.
okay.
Yeah, we've had a few of them. So that was.
That's happened every year. Don't ask me where they're coming from, but.
In the
All
building?
right.
In the building?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, beauty.
We scooped him out with a soup ladle. Of course, my boyfriend was telling me to kill it because he absolutely hates snakes. And I said, we can't have blood and carnage on the carpet. So I'm like, I'm not killing anything.
Hey, would you resend that link that we're on, Oakley? Because Randy just texted me and he's got the same issue I did. Ah, there's Michelle. So yeah, and they're texting me. So if you will get to them, that would be great. I'll let you do that part. We're going to go ahead and get started. Hang on. And then we'll figure that out for another time. I thought what I'd do is walk through from where we are today with the nomination process to all the way to after the decision is made and the communications that go out. Does that work for folks? Okay, so what I've got up on the screen is a marketing piece that's used in a couple different formats, and as we have routinely said, whatever we do in print, we also put it together for digital. And so this is used in a multitude of ways, but I'm trying to think of the date, by November, we have an editorial calendar that's being built out for our digital materials and our print materials. Anyway, this is due to go out shortly in both the print and digital format. So that's the abbreviated source of information. And then to take it a step further for more in-depth, this was in the magazine as a checklist that's more in-depth. And we will also update the website. We had a version of this, but this is a bit more design-wise friendly, so we'll switch those up. But ultimately, they say the same things, that there's a deadline of February 1st, and nominations are taken online, that it's a statewide application and impact, that individuals, not groups, are nominated, that anyone can nominate a person that has made an impact in South Dakota during their lifetime. Then we have categories, and this is a conversation for another day. These are the general overall categories. Then there's sub ones that you can go in more detail. This is a really good example of from an analog world to a digital world is not yet synced up like we should have it. And what I mean by that is there used to be 17 approximately different categories, and then they got condensed down, and then they expanded. And the problem with that back and forth is we haven't synced up the data from those ebb and flows. And so that's the challenge. It isn't insurmountable, but we know that when we can extract data based on subject content to inductee stories, that we just get a better pull on the medical world, the rodeo world, the education world. I mean, we have broad categories, but getting more specific with those categories gives us better data. Questions or comments or thoughts on that particular piece when it comes to the segmentation of the stories? Okay. So this is the public side of information. Where I want to go next is to the website. And this still looks too academic to me. And so putting a designer on it so that it has more of an intuitive feel to it. And I guess thoughts from folks that are looking at this source of information, any feedback?
Are you showing the screen, Greta? I'm sorry, I can't see anything.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Yep. So for any of you that are on, if you've got webcam access as well, we've got folks on that too. You can see on this source page that we tried to simplify the materials needed. So there's listed here, here's what you need for this nomination. The other thing that was simplified is that the nomination form now, you can see it all at once. Morning, Michelle.
Good morning.
You can see the form all at once. You don't have to pick these separate tabs, and I think that will be helpful so that when people get in there, they're going to see everything. In addition to, we're telling them on the upfront, here's the 5 things that you'll encounter on the form. We also have examples of answers to nomination questions. That was one of the things brought up as well. You do need to have an account, and that information in the link is here. It also lists the password reset so that if there's problems in that. We do have an activities checklist for the ceremony so that folks are aware of the type of things that happen when a person is inducted. You know, we've tried to give as much upfront of what this is all about. Hang on. So that's the marketing PR piece then to getting started. I would also, let me back up for all the way to the board, the discussion of prospects of potential nominations. I resent that list to the board this morning. Programming committee talked about it as well, and then the thought process from their discussion was that we'd really we are wanting to know contacts that board members have had with potential nominations being started by the 1st of December, so that we're really out there having that conversation overall. We have 12 potential nominations. Some of them are not as, I'm not certain as activity on those. So again, board members weighing in and putting information into this shared link is an important piece to this process. Any thoughts or comments on that activity?
So this is what we've been talking about for a while, right? We probably need to come up with 100 people, a really good brainstorm on folks that should be in the hall that aren't. And so this is the way to do that, right?
Correct.
Good. Are we taking the time now to do that, or are we?
I think we have time. Sure. Yep.
Greta, one of the things I think is always a challenge is just thinking of people off the top of our head is okay, but I'm wondering if we see a list of the past winners by community and check, like for me, to go to Andy Patterson at the Sioux Falls Area Community Foundation and just start to reach out to a few other people and say, hey, here's the list of the people that have been recognized in the Sioux Falls area. Can you think of others?
Yeah.
Because just looking at a white piece of paper is you know, I think more difficult, more challenging, more of a hurdle than if we had a current list by market and then reached out to some people that would be strategic.
I like that idea too, Dave.
I would say I think it can go either way. I recognize I recognize what you're at. It tends to prompt when you've looked at others, but I know there's some top of mind.
Yeah, so and my point wasn't necessarily prompting by looking at others, but it's just to know if they want or not. In other words,
Right.
I'm more
Who's
curious to say, have you thought of them and them and them and them? So if I go to Andy Patterson and he gives me a list of 10 names and 9 of them have been inducted, it seems like a wasted effort.
Oh, come on, Dave.
Well, it's
No,
just a
I'm
more
kidding.
efficient process.
Yeah, no, you're right. Oakley, will you see that the last name master and the hometown list, will you put that on the board network? And we should also have, you can do that also by looking at the inductee directory, but for the point of having a handout, we'll link those on the board network and on the website. Yeah. So Oakley will get those to you.
Thank you.
Good points. Okay. All right. So with nominations being worked on, Oakley, do you want to just talk a little bit about how that engages your time with folks working on nominations? Just, you know, what's that like? Because you are the main recipient of that activity.
Yeah, just if anybody has any questions or any trouble with the documents, they usually call or email me. Most people, I can walk them through it pretty easily on the process. Otherwise, sometimes some people who aren't very technically savvy, and I always tell them, you know, if they know anyone or even their grandchildren, to just for sure enlist their help. But if they do have a lot of problem uploading documents, usually it works pretty well. They'll just email me the documents as far as like reference letters and things like that, and I can upload the documents into the form. And as it gets closer to the due date, I just kind of go through all the nomination applications and try to clean them up in case there's duplicates or anything of that nature, or if they're missing documents, then I try to call the nominator and the people that I know are working on the application just to make sure that they have everything in so that they have the strongest application possible for the recipient. Of course, without, you know, and some people it's just kind of hard to get them to even narrow it down to the instruction base. But I just kind of try to clean it up as much as possible without, you know, getting rid of any information that's pertinent. But did you want me to touch base on anything else, Greta, or?
You want to talk a little bit about what's up on the screen now, which is the cumulative of the digital nominations, keeping in mind it's not the cumulative, it's the 3-year pool. And Oakley, I don't believe you've had a chance yet to move off the ones that are no longer eligible, or have you?
No, there's still a few in there that are no longer eligible that will be taken out. We have to figure out a place to put those because we don't want to get rid of them completely. There are the ones that are labeled inducted that have already been inducted, but of course their nomination application is different than what shows on their bio on the inductee directory. And we still want to keep that there in case there's anything that we can use for LOA. And of course, we don't want this digital information to be lost. And so there are a few still on here that from 2017 that are no longer eligible. There are a few that are resubmitting, and I will update those years because then they're pretty much resubmitting their whole application so that they can be considered yet again for another 3 years. And so this will be all cleaned up before we get more into looking at the actual applications to go through and rate all of them. And of course, you'll just get the list where you can click on the link and it will lead you directly to the nomination applications so you can review those.
So, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, so our website process, we're still kind of working through some kinks on. The wiki is kind of difficult as far as where it's more of a label system. I'd like to figure out where we can actually move them into other pages, but it's a little bit difficult on the system that we have to house all this information, but just totally separate it. And so I'm still trying to figure out a way to retain this information without.
So, Oakley, let me, if I could, the person that assists us, that's been, RIT has transitioned, so that should alleviate what you're describing.
Okay.
So we are now set up to be directly connected. Our marketing and event assistants, and she's savvy with tech, having a middle person to our coder. We still need to have an interpreter to a certain degree so that, Oakley, what you described about it's a little bit difficult to do this or do that, it actually isn't, because the coder knows how to move those pages to where they need to go. So that transition is just taking place, and I expect to see some fruits from that happen. My question to the board is, I'm wondering, I'm thinking that for the purpose of the nominations, to just be looking at a 3-year pool is the ideal, and not have a combination of who's been inducted and who you're looking at. Is that a correct assumption? That the only thing you have here is a 3-year pool?
So let's take a step back. I made the comment, it'd be nice to know who was previously inducted. I suspect it would also be nice to know who was previously nominated. When we start to source or identify, to Michelle's point, of a list of 100 or whatever that is. So in some way, I don't know if it belongs on this page or where it belongs, but it would be nice to have, the list of inductees, a list of current nominees, nations under consideration, and a list of past nominated, but because you'd want to be a little sensitive if somebody was nominated 8 years ago, their 3 years went up, and now somebody reaches out to them and says, hey, what about a possible consideration for induction in the Hall of Fame? And they say, well, yeah, I think it's just something you want to know, because you'd probably make that ask, or you'd talk about it a little bit differently with them or with their nominator. So it seems to me we'd want past inductees, current nominees under consideration, past nominees by market. But then, so that's taking the step back. And then in terms of this sheet, it just depends what you're trying to accomplish with it.
Well, I think it's an evolution in the sense of its primary purpose has been for the board to do its work with reviewing nominations, and then it's evolved into also having those that have been inducted. So I think we're at this venture where we can do some segmentation. At least that would be my intent, and the three things that you described make sense. So at this point, it's getting in touch with the coding to see how that segmentation can take place. So, okay, this is available to the board at any time. Let me also, just again for the digital side of the house, as a reminder, on the public, that site under inductee directory, you can get by last name. You can also go into the advanced search and put in categories. You can put in the year, and you can put in the hometown and get a full list digitally as well. So just keep that in mind for when you're thinking about things or want to know more. You can do that query as well. So nominations are in, and then the process internally, a number of you have experienced, in fact, looking at who's on the website. There's one person not identified, but looking at the names that are there, all of you have gone through the process for making a selection in the board rating. This being an example of that rating sheet and the links that happen with it. So I would open it up at this point for, let me just show one other source, a couple other sources just to lead up to that. So you all receive this instruction sheet and the link to your specific page. And that has, we did that mid-March. And then from mid-March until the week before the board meeting, you folks complete your work, for then you get the top 25. Is there anything in that process, either communication-wise or activity, that you want to speak about? Okay, hearing none, then what I would share with you is after you make a decision, the board chair nominate or contacts the nominator and the inductee. And I think Randy and I spoke about we would do that, the board chair and the CEO. It would be better to do that together, and we can do that through conference calling. And because there were questions or comments, I mean, the first run through can kind of be some uncertainty with questions that may come up, and if the CEO and the board chair do it together, we can likely get a bigger bang for the buck and time in covering things. So Michelle, you and I can visit about that. But that process usually it can take a couple days, it can take a week, just depending on how quickly people get back to you. And this is for those that have been elected to have that communication. Once that's done, then Oakley sends out a notification to those that have not been selected, and there are 2 forms. One, so she gets all the ones out that have not been selected, and they can have a choice of, well, they're either remaining within the 3-year pool, or they may choose to reapply. I don't have off the top of my head the numbers that choose to resubmit, but it's minimal. I do know that. There's usually only a couple of folks that decide to resubmit after 3 years. So those 2 official notices, those 2 activities, who's been elected, who has not been elected, eligibility status is handled in the first 2 weeks. Then a flurry of activities between congratulating the inductees, which again, all board members are encouraged, and we'll do some officialness. We did a little bit, but we need to incorporate it system-wide, have board members reach out to new inductees as well. And then there's, we start in with the process as a whole. So any questions from the time that you folks make your determination to the communications of who's elected or non-eligible?
Nope.
Okay. Anything not covered or any other remarks that folks would like to keep top of mind since we're getting ready to start in again?
We're good.
Okay, this is recorded and we will post it and send it out so that in particular our new board members can have this information as well. I appreciate all of you taking the time. It's helpful, in particular, it's helpful just for me to sequentially think through what information is needed, and some good feedback on the potential nominations, because that's where we're at. We're in that time, so it'll be good to get the information going. So.
So,
I do
sorry.
have one question yet. Back to this whole idea of sourcing more or building a list. Maybe we should give some thought to people that we would want to ask for ideas. again, I think of the chair of the South Dakota Community Foundation. I think of the chair of the Sioux Falls Area Community Foundation, or not the chair, excuse me, the president. Sure, there's others. I guess beyond board members, it might be worth our while to
Good point.
ask for their input.
And to share the, yeah.
You know, Ted Munster, who has been around a long time and knows a lot of people, has been feeding me names for some time.
Yeah.
And I will enter that certainly into the spreadsheet, but it's people like that I think if we even just ask, I think they've got some real top of mind folks that think should come into the hall.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a better brainstorm, is who are those real thought leaders
Exactly.
that probably all of us know,
Yes.
right?
I think the perhaps reaching out to the presidents of the various higher university foundations. For instance, Ted was in that role. Well, when you're in
That's
that
right.
role, you have a unique view of people who have been successful. So I think of SDA, I think of all the university foundation presidents having an opportunity to weigh in. But again, I'd rather than just giving them a blank sheet, give them a list of that they can work off of would be, I think, helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Do we need to have this as a board agenda on in November? I mean, what's our deadline for having some of this? Because we want to make an impact this year yet, don't we?
Right. The programming committee reviewed it, and they would like to see by December 1st feedback from as many folks as we can get on the list. But why don't I craft a short message, Michelle, and if you'll look at it, and then if you could send it out to the board as a whole.
Sure.
Okay.
You bet.
All right. I'll do that. I'll get that along with the attachments that have the master list and links. Yeah. Okay.
This is Ann. I've got a list of about 20 people. Do I talk that over with? Who do I talk that over with?
You have an email this morning, Ann, that has this shared Google file, and if you need help with that, Oakley can help you with it, and you can just put the names directly in there.
Well, okay. I'm having trouble this morning. So I'll work on that.
Yeah. Give Oakley a call. She can help you walk through it too, Ann.
Okay.
Thanks, Ann, for having 20. You're one of those that I figured would have a group of folks. How about Frank? Did Frank give you some ideas too? He'd probably know a bunch too.
Yeah, we've talked it over, but there wasn't anybody he recommended at this point.
Okay.
But I've been talking with a bunch of women that would, there are a lot of women that aren't on the horizon, and part of our difficulty here is it's like, well, gosh, they are pretty young or whatever, but the opportunities for women have just come in the last 20 years in South Dakota. So we're going to be dealing with that when we propose women. And there's, I think, a surge on an interest in seeing some women brought forth because of the 100 years of the vote, that kind of thing that's going on now this year. And they're just thinking after 100 years there should be some more women that are considered. So we're going to see more of that. So I've been talking with some female leaders out here in Sioux Falls. That's where the list is coming from.
Well, that's great. That is great, because we
there's
never do have enough women in the pool, even to draw from.
Yeah, and I think that with a concerted effort to take a look at some, we can do that this year. And I've got some Native Americans on the list too. So hopefully we can take a look at them.
Great.
But I think the point too is that a lot of them might seem quite young compared to some of the others that are traditionally nominated, and it's because they never had a chance before. And now that they do, they've done great things in a short period of time. And it's just one of the things we'll have to keep in mind as we look at all this.
Yeah.
Paul?
Any other feedback or comments before we wrap things up? Okay, it's Thursday. Have a great rest of your week, and thank you for taking the time.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, folks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.